Quick zoom to start this show. What is happening out there, rotoscouts basketball fans? Happy NBA trade deadline day. Don't know why I had it in my head that we were 2 days out from the deadline when I was talking about it during yesterday's show. Obviously today, the 8th, the deadline. But for some reason I looked it up like a few weeks ago and I just had it in my head that it was Friday the 8th when obviously Thursday the 8th. So hell of a deadline day. A lot of fun watching the trades come down as usual. Been following it for the last few hours, making changes to the projections on the fly as things happen. We had fairly significant impact to today's slate with a lot of different spots. We've got a bunch of major question marks. So this is definitely going to be a show, coming in for a 4:45 show. A lot of this is going to change. Like, we're about to dive into a breakdown of a slate with a bunch of sims that are probably going to be very, very different from what we actually end up dealing with. Things like Jalen Brunson. If Jalen Brunson doesn't play tonight, I have no idea what happens to the Knicks. Normally I would say, all right, we'd have, some Deuce McBride. We would have had Malachi Flynn getting some minutes. He's gone. Archie Diacono's gone. He was a guy who could, potentially have stepped into like 8 minutes and handled the ball. No Evan Fournier down bench, and they're not going to have Burks or Bojan tonight. Fantastic trade. I love the pickup, and Quentin Grimes obviously gone too. So just a lot of guard types that would have had the potential to get their hands on the ball if Jalen was out, not going to be there. I think if Jalen doesn't play, I've already got Deuce McBride at 30 plus minutes, but it is going to be the Deuce McBride show all night long. As is, Tibbs is probably going to run those guys 40 plus minutes. So it's going to be a really interesting slate. A lot of stuff to run through. Let's say hi. Cujo's here hanging out. What a day with some of the trades. You nailed it there, bud. Hope day is going well. Day's going all right. The NBA part of the day has been great. Some pet hair on my hat, as usual. The NBA and all that stuff and the trade deadline's been fun. That part of the day's been great. Beach Bums here. What's going on? Steven Leibowitz, little madness tonight. Yeah, that's for sure, buddy. We got through some madness so far this afternoon. It's an interesting slate last night. Thought we had a lot of things that we hit on. A couple key things that didn't quite come through. But interesting one. Just missed on the one lineup that I ran. Had a bunch of guys had just their right around their median projections. Didn't get to any kind of ceiling scores. Like Sabonis had a good score. He was in there. So it was one of those ones where it was like, this is a perfectly fine. Might have been a good cash game lineup, I guess, but just didn't have that tournament upside. But we go right back at it today. FanDuel's got an interesting one. I like those FanDuel tournaments, as you guys know, that are lower buy-in, larger field. Those are my preference for the main slate tournaments. So they've got a decent one up today. That's what I ran the Sims against today. So we're going to get into it. Pink hand waving to you too, A-Cam. Good to see you, buddy. So without further ado, let's kind of just dive in. I'm going to start with, running down the trades. I've got it up on the site with the projections in with all the news and everything. So we'll start there. Traded and inactive players, or traded therefore inactive, or guys that were waived with this trade deadline. This is only the guys that are outgoing from the teams that are on the slate. The incoming guys, we're not expecting any of the incoming guys to play unless we get news to the contrary anywhere. And that's typically never the case. So right now, this is just the list of guys who were potentially going to be on this slate and are no longer on this slate. FanDuel made it screwy by going in and plucking the guys out from the slate. So like they just don't exist anymore. Which just made things screwy on the background on the spreadsheets and the projections and getting that over to the Sims and everything. But hopefully everything worked out. I haven't looked through the Sims yet, but it does look like we're going to be okay. In putting it up on the spreadsheet. But guys who were traded and or inactive: Cameron Payne, David Roddy, Yuta Watanabe, Chimezi Metu, Royce O'Neal, Keita Bates-Diop, Jordan Goodwin, Victor Oladipo, Corey Joseph, Spencer Dinwiddie, Dougie McBuckets, Doug McDermott, Robin Lopez, Grant Williams, Seth Curry, Rashawn Holmes, Quentin Grimes, Evan Fournier, Ryan Arcidiacono, Kelly Olynyk, Ochai Agbaji, and Buddy Hield. That's the list of guys. If I missed one or two downboard guys, let me know. But I believe that's the list of guys that were on this slate and are no longer on this slate. And then we've got, on top of that, those obvious changes, Draymond Green, probables. Draymond, Andrew Wiggins, Luka Doncic, Kyrie Irving, Alex Caruso, Dalen Terry, Kobe White, Giannis, Jay Crowder, Brooke Lopez. Questionables, Tyrese Halliburton, Benedict Mathurin, Jalen Smith, Dominic Barlow, Maxi Kleber, Jalen Brunson, Jericho Sims, which could be another big piece. Torrey Craig. We might get Point Taj Gibson tonight. Torrey Craig, Jaren Jackson Jr., Derrick Rose, Jordan McLaughlin, Damian Lillard, Bradley Beal, Devin Booker. So some fairly significant names on the questionables list. Out, Chris Paul, Gary Payton, Tristan Thompson, Dorian Finney-Smith, Day'Ron Sharpe, Lonnie Walker IV, Dante Exum, Derek Lively, OG Anunoby, Julius Randle, Mitchell Robinson, Patrick Williams, Desmond Bain, Jake LaRavia, Lamar Stevens, Marcus Smart, Zaire Williams, who's doubtful, Chris Middleton, Kevin Knox, Otto Porter Jr., and Kira Lewis. So that's a lot of names. This isn't like a 14-game slate. So we're going to keep an eye on some of those. Obviously some very key changes potentially. Again, if Jalen doesn't go, it's chaos. If Maxey doesn't play, it's interesting with some of the outbound pieces in Grant Williams, Rashawn Holmes going out from Dallas. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. Might find some more minutes for Maxence Prosper or somebody like that. If Jericho Sims doesn't go, the Knicks pretty shorthanded overall. I think it's going to be like I said, like an aggressive 8-man. I don't know that Tibbs goes further down the bench than that. He's not really inclined to do that most nights. You could get, assuming they're active, Jacob Toppin, who's in the dunk contest. Couple scrap minutes maybe, but nothing like projectable or overly relevant. If Hallie doesn't go and Ben Mathurin doesn't go, that's going to be interesting. Jalen Smith, obviously, as well. If Jaren Jackson and Derrick Rose don't play, that's interesting. So, a lot of spots. Obviously, if Beal and Booker don't go, that big uptick for KD. Fortunately, that Detroit game, by the way, not on this slate on either site, thankfully, because not only did they trade a bunch of guys, but they've also got now, just looking at it, if you're playing that late slate, good luck. Cade Cunningham, probable. Aja Thompson, questionable. Danilo Gallinari's out in that game. They also traded away Bojan and Alec Burks and a couple other pieces. So it's just like, I have no idea what's going to be happening in that one. I am glad we don't have to deal with that game today. So without further ado, let's get into this thing. Top two guys here on the list, I just left them there when I sorted it just a few minutes ago. Just for whatever, they were both at 0% ownership. Right now, I don't see anything for beyond the, I've got him at 10 minutes and he didn't really come up with Maxence Prosper. If we find him more minutes, if, say, Maxi Kleber doesn't play, he probably does hit the slate because he's at 3,000 on the DraftKings board. So the 0% ownership, I didn't catch it when I put the sim in. And I can, you know what? Let me rerun that DK one because that is, I don't think he's going to hit the board at all with a 7-point projection on DK. But if that suddenly became a 14, 15-point projection at the dead min, he could. Let's just call it, I'll call it low ownership for the purposes of this because I'm just going to leave him at the 7 points. I could even technically rerun it after that and rerun it with a game where we're projecting against a Kleber being out situation. But let me at least give him a couple points of ownership. And it was that one. Just putting this in the background real quick. Sort that guy. No lineups for you. You're going to kick that in there with 4, just in case, with all the value on the slate. I think it makes sense. I've been defaulting to 4, just to have that question answered. I don't think we're any kind of, requirement of 4 today. We don't have that kind of setup on any of these teams so far. We could end up in that territory where it's like, will 4 of these guys actually make sense? Potentially with the Knicks. But let's take Maxence Prosper and Matt Hurt out of here for now, just for sorting purposes. But keep in mind, again, if minutes do open up, Maxence Prosper at the dead minimum could potentially get interesting on DraftKings. Just as a value play, I don't think he's going to be out there, scoring 40 DraftKings points by any means. But as a dead minimum price guy, if he picks up 18 minutes or whatever, there's potential upside there. Right now, top of the board on both sites, Dennis Smith Jr. Everybody wanted to see that one. Just a lot of missing pieces in Brooklyn. And that's going to be the case with a number of these. So Brooklyn, as discussed, traded away Dinwiddie. We're also without Cam Johnson. We're also without Lonnie Walker. We're also without Dorian Finney-Smith. We're also without Daron Sharp. So there's just minutes. Crazy, crazy minutes. So Cam Thomas, Mikal Bridges, Dennis Smith. We'll see who else hits value, but those are going to be guys playing, well above 30 minutes. Claxton, obviously. And then I've got minutes going to Jalen Wilson, Ben Simmons, Trenton Watford, Noah Clowney. It's a wacky one tonight. But DSJ, I know he went bust on us the other night. 18 minutes, 11.9 FanDuel points. He was in some foul trouble in the third quarter. He had like 3 fouls and took a seat for a while. And just not his night. But we're going right back there. I have no issues with it. 5,200 point guard only on the FanDuel slate. 4,200 point guard shooting guard on DraftKings is bonkers low. Highest owned player on both sites, I believe. But pulling in the sim, a 60% win rate. 82% of the top 150 on FanDuel. 66% win rate on DraftKings. 88% of the top 150 in that sim. He's been at 1.02 per minute over the course of the season. Where'd he go? Oh, there he is. I've got him at lower than that today by a decent margin, and he's still crashing the party like this. Over the last coming up on 5 o'clock. I'm going to try and keep an eye on the time. Over the last 30 days, with Johnson, Dinwiddie. I did this when I did the projections, but I want to give you guys the number. Finney. Lonnie. It's just stupid. And no O'Neal. Royce O'Neal also gone. Over the last 30 days, when I take out Cam Johnson, Spencer Dinwiddie, Dorian Finney-Smith, Lonnie Walker IV, and Royce O'Neal, the only guys left, and they've played a minute each in that configuration, are Nick Claxton, Mikal Bridges, Jalen Wilson, Cam Thomas, and Ben Simmons. I guess that was just the other day. Let's extend that sample back. This is still too small. So we're looking at 50s minutes in 29 minutes in that sample. Dennis Smith Jr. was at 1.34. We're obviously not going there. Let's see. With just Cam Johnson and Dinwiddie taken out of the equation, since the beginning of November, 382 minutes for DSJ, 1.06 per minute, 1.02 on DraftKings. So there's a decent argument to be made that I could give him even more, and he would just be bonkers high. I think keeping him around where I've got him is reasonable. But there is plenty to go around. Cleveland also just a good defensive team. It's not a great matchup. Oh, I didn't talk about the Vegas numbers, did I? So there's an okay total in this game. Actually, let me pull up the most recent. I'm sure some of these are different. Yeah, so there's an okay total in this game. The Cleveland-Brooklyn game. 224-point total. Cleveland favored by 7.5 in Brooklyn. That's enough on the board, but it's not the greatest, again, not the greatest matchup for what DSJ does. So I think keeping him around where I've got him is reasonable. I think it would be a little unnecessary to put him out to that number, that higher rate, one fantasy point per minute plus. So I think that one's all right. Looking at the rest of the board real quick, Golden State, Indy, highest game on the board in terms of the game total, 249 points. That is 7 points higher than the Utah-Phoenix game, which is a 242.5. Last two games of the night aren't on the slate. Everything else is in the 220s with one game in the two teens. So we've got Golden State, Indy. Indy favored by 6 in Indy, 249-point total. San Antonio at Orlando. Orlando favored by 10.5, 224.5-point total there. The Mavs at MSG to play the Knicks. Mavs favored by 3.5. Knicks very shorthanded. Jalen Brunson questionable. Jericho Sims questionable. 227-point total there. Cleveland at Brooklyn, I mentioned 7.5-point total, or 7.5-point spread favoring Cleveland on the road, 224 points. Chicago at Memphis. 6-point total there, potentially shorthanded Memphis team. 6-point spread favoring Chicago, 216.5 points. That's our low-end game of the night in terms of the game total. Bucks just favored by a point over the T-Wolves. Very good game. That should be a fun one to watch. Minnesota at Milwaukee, 227 points on the board there. And then last game of the slate, Phoenix favored by 6 at home over Utah, 242.5. So, couple high-end spots, couple low-end spots, and then, the rest just kind of lingering in the middle. But those 220s, that's not a great total for 2024. We've seen a lot of aggressive games this year, 230s, and so on. So, could be a low-end slate in some of those ways, but there's just so much open in the 4s, in the 3s, price-wise, that doesn't really matter. Let's say hi to some other folks here. I've been looking at the spreadsheets too much. Power says, got this deadline wrong by 80%. The waves get me all shocked, though. Dorian Finney shits, says Ricky Lee. What's going on, guys? Trey's here. Trey just got back from the gym. Happy Quinones Day. Clay's birthday today, apparently, says Beach Bum. All right. If you're chasing the birthday narratives, Clay Thompson's birthday. Trey plays Quinones every day now. Travis hopes everyone is doing well. It's nice of him. Trey, new conspiracy theory just dropped on Reddit. Every Super Bowl that Jim Nantz announces, the team wearing white wins. That's San Francisco this year. There you go. Lock it in. I thought it had to go to Taylor Swift, though. Does Jim Nantz have more power than Taylor Swift? I don't know. Feel like I have to play Watford, says Stephen Leibowitz. I'll give 7.5 versus the skeletal team. What's up, BB? Underdog says Murray is waiting to be traded. The fuck does that mean? I don't mean that expletive in your direction, Power. I hadn't seen that. I mean that in Underdog's direction. What does that mean? DeJounte Murray back, waiting to be traded, questionable for Friday. I think that might just be their sarcasm trickling in. Sometimes they put those little sarcastic comments in there, in like what the injury is, because like it was kind of a phony, a fugazi injury. They were just keeping him off the court just because they were trying to trade him, and then they didn't trade him. Unless it's one of those, like, something got held up with the paperwork, but the league's going to allow it, because it was in before the deadline kind of things. That's a weird note. I think they're just being sarcastic. Just looking at how they wrote it. DeAndre Hunter probable for Friday, but that's tomorrow. So let's get into this rundown a little bit more here. I got too much stuff open. Clicking all over the place today. Beantown's here. What's up, Beantown? Kenny Woodhouse. What's going on, guys? So let's just kind of talk the full board through, I think. There's a lot of differences site to site. A lot more high ownership on FanDuel, at least of the last time that I checked. Like, FanDuel's ownership was peaking way higher. Where DraftKings seemed a little bit more balanced across some of these guys. But we'll see how it comes up. Obviously, the sim went in a little bit of a different direction. Yeah, it's gone up a little bit since I ran that sim, which makes sense. It's gone up a lot. Oh, shit. All right. Projected ownership on DSJ is now just bananas across the board. But it is accurate to what I was about to say in that FanDuel has 7 guys projected between 30 and 40%, and then DSJ up above 70%. And then DraftKings has nobody in the 30s. 9 guys in the 20s, and DSJ about 50%. So it's more spread as far as these ownership projections go. It's not my ownership projections. I don't really put much of a stamp on it. It's just I bring these up because it's what's being used in the sim in the background. But, they aren't, for whatever they are, quality-wise, they aren't tragically wrong most of the time. DSJ is going to be just absolute chalk. I don't like calling anything a lock, but that just seems like a clear value spot that everybody's going to have. That just makes total sense. So he's now owned, not quite at this level. We're still at 82%, a little ahead of the field. I ran one earlier with just 50% randomness in the sim. Like I said, I've been experimenting with some of the randomness to see how the results go. And just to be clear how that impacts it, the more you lower the randomness, the more your sim is going to skew toward those median projections. So if you put it at 0 randomness, you'll just get a straight line by projection, right? You'll get 22,000, 40,000, whatever the total is on tonight's slate, just straight line in a row from the highest projected to the lowest projected. If you run it with 10%, it's more, aligning toward the optimal lineup, the cash games. The more you add randomness up and out to their default of 100%, the more you're replicating the actual curve. So, bringing it down to, I ran one at 50, I ran one at 70. Point being, the more you lower the randomness, the more Dennis Smith you get. So in that 50%er, he was in basically 100% of the lineups. He was at 82 in the 100% randomness setup here. But now that he's cresting up to 75% public ownership, that didn't mean to say that, 70+% public ownership. It'll be interesting to see how he falls ROI wise, but he seems like just the clear cut plug and play guy of the day. Getting a lot of Chris Dunn in the Sims on FanDuel. Getting even more of them on DraftKings. Another guy that's just, it's the same situation with Dunn, just projected for fewer minutes. If he was projected up with another 11 minutes like DSJ is, he would be an equivalent value. Right now he's pulling a 45% win rate and 51% of the top 150 for just 4,000 point guard and small forward. So I like the different flexibility that he provides in alongside Dennis Smith on that slate. On FanDuel, he adds shooting guard, so you do get flexibility. It's common guard flexibility rather than having the guard and forward flexibility that he provides on DraftKings. So just a little bit of a differentiated play, but looks like a great option on both sites. That said, on FanDuel, we did get to him less than that win rate. We got to him at 20%. He is... Oh, he was projected for more ownership before. Where'd he go? Let's see what happened. Maybe something changed that I didn't catch. Oh, his ownership fell apart. What happened? How many minutes? Did they change them? I want to see how many minutes they're giving him. I got him at 24. And right on a point per minute over 24 minutes. I had Keontae George at 0.95, and he was looking really good. I don't know where he is on this board. There he is. At 53 on FanDuel, he was coming up just 1.86% of the time, but at 3,900 on DraftKings at 21%, 30% of your top 150. The reason I bring up George, I was actually struggling with that spot, and I'm really surprised to see the massive change in the ownership in the background here in the last update that they ran. And again, this is not my ownership, not my site, totally out of my control. But Keontae George, Chris Dunn, dropped from, they had him in the high 30s down to 2% with no real change to the projection that I can see. They might have cut 2 minutes off of him. They've got him at 22 minutes. I've got him at 24. They've got him at 20 FanDuel points. I've got him at 24 FanDuel points. You know, a point per minute, they're giving him a little bit less. Let me go back to that on Wowie. This is a kind of critical spot. I just don't know what changed here. Let me look at... Did they add somebody to the player pool? Sorry, guys. I don't want to derail the whole show on this, but getting these couple guys right for DraftKings is kind of key. Keontae George and Chris Dunn are both pretty cheap, and both should play a decent amount of minutes, and they've been not bad in this situation. How many guys do they have? I got 10 guys projected to play. They got 10, 11. So they added somebody. Who did they add? You're at 7. They have Yurt 7 getting 6 minutes, but that doesn't really matter. But that's who they have in that I don't have in, I think. That's neither here nor there, though. So the relevant part of this is going to be... all right. No Fontecchio. Fontecchio got traded yesterday. Baji got traded. All right. Who the hell else? Olynyk got traded. Was that it? I think this is right. Ugh. This was the one I wanted to actually start on before, and I forgot. Because, like I said, it was just annoying looking at it where they've been. Yeah, Olynyk, Abaji, Fontecchio. So, all right, since the start of the year, wait, what the hell? What happened to this sample now? Hang on. Something screwy here. All right, that's right now. I know you guys can't see this, and it's just annoying, and I'm just like talking to myself in the background here, but give me a second. I feel like the sample was bigger when I was looking at it earlier. Now it's back. So weird. All right. Since the start of November, with Fontecchio and Olynyk removed, I don't even care about Agbaji at this point. Although I probably should, because he has played a fair... Maybe that's what happened. It's probably not going to matter, but I think that's what happened to my sample when I... Yep, that's what it was. Okay. Let's just deal with it as Fontecchio and Olynyk gone. In 259 minutes, Keontae George has been at 1.02 FanDuel points, 1.07. 259 minutes, 536 possessions. Chris Dunn, over 187 minutes, 387 possessions, has been at 1.02. I've got George at 0.95 today. Dunn at 1.0 on the nose. I could take Dunn down a little bit. But like I said, it was just, the ownership change that they're projecting is shocking on that spot, where I don't see much of a change. I mean, 2-3 points maybe. He's 5,200 on FanDuel. It doesn't really impact the FanDuel slate quite as much. 5,300 for Keontae George on FanDuel doesn't impact the slate quite as much. But George on DraftKings is 3,900. Chris Dunn is 4,000. Tight spot. Let's move on from this. Just seeing what chat's up to while I'm struggling with getting this figured out. Tiz played Jalen Wilson the other day. Watford and him should both get run. Agreed. They waived Giles, as Beantown's saying. All right, so looking at what's on the board here. You know, if you want to consider a downtick for Chris Dunn, I get it. But we're now projected well ahead of the field, where that was well behind the field earlier. I don't really know what to make of that change right now. I could pull the rate down if you wanted to say you could give Keontae George his 0.85 instead of the 0.95. I get him an extra tenth of a point per minute because he's been like 2.5 tenths of a point per minute better in this situation over the course of the season. Dunn, I don't know. I think there's minutes to go around. I think there's plenty of opportunity at price on DraftKings. On FanDuel, I just don't care as much. 5,200 for George was coming through. But again, we were behind the field. And now if that comes down, if I take a couple points away from him. But, wow. When I said everything was going to change, this wasn't the spot I was necessarily thinking of. Anyway. Let's get some of the positional stuff. It is 5:20. Got to keep this rolling. I'll keep on thinking about that one, update it, and get it right in projections as after the show. So sorting to guards. Mentioned the New York situation. Dante DiVincenzo, as much as his price keeps going up, his performance has been fantastic. Who knew that Dante DiVincenzo was one of the 5 best players in the league? He's not. Who do I trust more, McBride or Keontae George? Probably Deuce. I trust, if nothing else, the security of minutes for Deuce. I've got Deuce at 30, and he could only go up from here, I think. Played 31.4 the other night, put up 26 FanDuel points. That is a guy, as I say with all these Knicks, he's, got to make his couple of threes that he's going to take. He's taking 2.6 a game, making 1.2. He'll take more than that with more time. Definitely needs to, he'll be the primary facilitator if Jalen's out. When he's on the court, he'll be a primary or secondary facilitator, and a guy who will take some threes. He also plays very good aggressive defense, so he can get his hands on the ball and create some fantasy points that way. So I do like Deuce. I like the security of minutes a little bit more than Keontae George at this point. I do reserve a little bit of leeway on those Utah guys until I figure out what the hell's going on there with that ownership, because that is a weird change with nothing else changing. So Devo looks great. Just, massive upside, whether Jalen's out there or not. But another guy that, if no Jalen, he's just going to take all the shots, roughly. So Devo looks fantastic. Upside beyond 40 points. 7,900 on DraftKings, shooting guard, small forward, 35.45% of your win rate, 38% of your top 150. McBride at 4,100 point guard, shooting guard, 25% win rate, 33% of your top 150. I have no issues getting to big shares of those guys, and both of them will just trend upward. On FanDuel, it's the same story. Devo 8,100 over there, getting pricey, but pulling it off, 44.9%, 54% of your top 150, the second highest owned player probably. And Deuce, 26.4% of your win rate, 38.6% of the top 150. Point guard only, 4,700. Not quite the value that he is on DraftKings, but still a significant piece on this slate. Alex Caruso skipping down the list a little bit, looking good on both sides. 53 on DraftKings, both guard eligible. At 63 on FanDuel, 1,000 more against the higher cap, both guard spots. 30.16% win rate, 26% of your top 150. DraftKings, it's 21-17. I like that. Mikal Bridges, I've got him out a little bit ahead of competing projections that I've seen. I like him a lot in this spot. If we're talking about nets that are going to be the primary, the focal point with pieces missing, if we like DSJ, how do we not like Mikal Bridges at these prices with 40 minutes projected? I legit think he's got no downside beyond, 38 minutes. Played 38 and a half the other night. Put up 40 FanDuel points. Not his greatest performance. He's around a point per minute guy with upside beyond that in the right spots. It's just the Cleveland game environment, not great, but it is one of those handful of games in the 220s tonight. It's not our 2 teens game. So I don't dislike that spot at all for one of the leading nets. 25.3% usage. We've seen him at higher rates than these over the course of time. So I think it's a good spot for Mikal. 8,000 on FanDuel, shooting guard, small forward. 7,500 shooting guard, small forward on DraftKings. I don't dislike it. Kyrie, I definitely think there's room for Kyrie. There's room for Luka, both playing at the Garden tonight. One or the other definitely can get into some of my lineups. That said, on FanDuel, Luka came up at just 0.48% win rate just because of his aggressively high price. 12.8. Very expensive. Kyrie at 94, both guard spots, came up a lot more frequently. 14.19% win rate. 18% of your top 150 for Kyrie. Came out the other night when we were talking about him in that Brooklyn spot. Put up nearly a 50, 48.9. Played nearly 40 minutes. They were letting him get out there and be aggressive. He didn't quite come through on the revenge game, but at price, that was a decent game. On DraftKings at 8,700, both guard spots, 20% win rate, 20% of your top 150. Rounding up slightly. And then on DraftKings for Luka, we have a lot more playability. 12,000, still very expensive against their cap, but 9.3% win rate, getting to him at 4%. I have no issues if you want to call the win rate your cap for ownership. I have no issues having 10% Luka Doncic on basically any given slate, particularly with a little Madison Square Garden juice. I don't dislike that. Got Luka at 155 tonight. Kyrie at 125. It's below Luka's current year production, but kind of on the nose for where this group has been recently. With Dallas, as I mentioned, couple pieces and parts missing, and technically, what is it? Luka, who's questionable? Maxi's questionable. Luka's just probable. Kyrie's just probable, but gotta figure they're going to be out there. But no more Rashawn Holmes, no more Seth Curry, no more Grant Williams. So potentially, as I was saying at the top, if Maxey doesn't go, Dwight Powell probably takes a step forward. Probably see a couple more minutes for Derek Jones, and then like Maxence Prosper probably picks up a few minutes as a very cheap guy. He right now, let me see where that sim came up. I reran that sim just for him. Should be easy to spot with that long name. Nope, that was Nickeil Alexander-Walker. He did not land with that 7-point projection when I put the ownership back on him. Came up with a 0.21% win rate and in 0% of the top 150. But again, that was leaving him where he was, just giving him something that would pull him through the sim when it came to ownership. So you could see a situation where that guy picks up value. Olivier Maxence Prosper. I know he's not on the board that you guys are looking at. I'm just jumping around mentally through some of these trades, and Dallas came up. But that would require Maxey not to play. Who else? Let's see. Spider looking pretty good. Not so much on FanDuel. 10-4 on FanDuel, both guard spots. 6.6% of your top 150. 6.6% win rate. 5.3% of your top 150. On DraftKings, a little bit better. Only 9,900 over there, both guard spots. 12.5% win rate. 16% of your top 150. This is where, again, DraftKings flattens out a little bit more, where FanDuel's more spikes and valleys, peaks and valleys today in terms of the ownership. DraftKings has a little bit more just flatness to it, especially at the guard spot here. A lot of guys just in the mid-teens and stuff. We have a few guys where we're a little bit above the field. Remember, nobody was in the 30s projection-wise on DraftKings ownership that went into this pool. Or it was probably a little different when this pool went together, but currently in these projections. So we would be getting well ahead of the field on Dunn and Keontae George in that scenario. Although, again, that's screwy right now. We'll see how it evens out. Well ahead of the field on Devo and Deuce. Around the field probably on Caruso, and then well ahead of the field on Mikal Bridges. And then everybody else probably evens out pretty much at or about what they look like here. Bradley Beal, if he plays, totally playable on DK. 12% winner, 12% of the top 150. On FanDuel, came up a little bit stronger, only 7,700 over there, both guard spots. 17.3% winner, 23% of the top 150. Just been a 0.94. Kind of taking a backseat to the other two. All of those guys down a little bit in overall fantasy point per minute rates. Still trying to figure it out a little. But, the prices are kind of corrected for that situation now. So Beal looks decent on FanDuel, looks playable on DraftKings. Kobe White, not that much on FanDuel, but again, playable on DraftKings with an 11% win rate, but did not come up against ownership that much, 3%. That's about a quarter of his projected ownership. He's projected to be owned a little ahead of that win rate. But that does mean that between this 3% and the 11%, there's a little bit of room. Maybe let the field have their few additional shares, still come in a little bit under. But if you wanted to go from 3 up to like 10%, I think you're okay. You're approaching the field at that level, but still under. But sim-wise, he came up just 3% of the top 150. Same thing with Grayson Allen. 10% win rate, just 3% of the top 150. Probably similar in terms of the ownership. A little bit lower. He's actually only double that ownership. Maybe a couple if you wanted a few additional Grayson Allen shares for whatever reason. It's no big deal. You could go out to about the field's level. But I think I'm probably below the field on Grayson Allen exposure here. 0.79 per minute. Just a 13.9% usage guy. It's not the kind of guy when he's just showing these kind of numbers. Not really the kind of guy to be like, all right, I want to get more Grayson Allen in my life. If he was showing a 30% win rate, then you'd be like, all right, regardless of how popular he might be. Again, no, not popular at all, really. On FanDuel, he comes up at 11.8%, 7.3% win rate. This is more of that scenario that I was just referring to. even with him at 10+% winner, I'm probably happy to be below the field on such a low usage, such a low per minute guy. He just seems like a dick. Just don't like him. I have no issue saying that. I don't say stuff like that a lot about some of these guys, even when they do. But Grayson Allen really seems like a dick. Everything through college and everything. Just don't like him. I've had him in lineups. It's not why, I'll play him. If he looks good fantasy-wise, I'll absolutely play him. No issues there. Cam Thomas looks pretty good on FanDuel, 25% winner, 20% of the top 150. Klay Thompson also looks good on his birthday, apparently. 17.9% winner there, 23% of your top 150. Birthday having nothing to do with that success, but happy birthday to Klay. On DK, both of those guys relevant, not over the top priorities. They look a lot better on FanDuel. On DraftKings, Cam is at a 10% win rate, 11% of the top 150. Klay just under a 10% win rate, just 6% of your top 150. This is a very good price for Klay Thompson. So is this. It came through for us on FanDuel. I don't mind getting a little ahead of the math here on Klay at 5,800. We've talked about him a few times in his general, underwhelming season. We're starting to get in the territory where it's like, all right, how low are we going to go on Klay Thompson price-wise here? We know that on the right night, even if we want to consider Klay like a heat check guy at this point, that's still a good price. Luka, we touched on. Jalen at 98. Came through a little bit on FanDuel, 5.7% win rate, 4.6% of the top 150. I cut him a little bit just for the ankle. I'm worried that he doesn't play, for one. He's currently questionable. It would be easy to have him at 50 plus. He is at 50 on the nose, basically on DraftKings. It would be easy to give him an additional 5 points in this situation, were it not for being banged up. So there's probably a little bit more room for Jalen if he plays. If he goes, I assume he's full strength. On DraftKings, he came up at 7.5%, 5% of the top 150 at 9,700. Again, more room for him as well over there. Just depends on what you want to make of the injury, the potential for him to, even in an aggressive Tibbs scenario, maybe he sits for a couple additional minutes that he wouldn't normally in this scenario. So I felt like it was prudent to give him a little bit less than he might normally get here. Gotta hit the gas pedal a little here. Colin Sexton, Damian Lillard, Devin Booker, Ben Mathurin in particular, Trey Jones, Malik Beasley, all pretty differentiated site to site. All look better on FanDuel than on DraftKings. Sexton, 11% winner on FanDuel at 14% of the top 150 versus just 7 and 10 on DraftKings. Dame pulls an 11% win rate, but falls below that. Probably a little popular on FanDuel at just 8,700. He's questionable too, if I'm remembering correctly. Didn't go last time. 6.7% of your top 150 on DraftKings, 6.7% win rate. I don't know why I keep reversing those. 12% of your top 150 for Dame. So you're actually getting a little bit more of Dame on DraftKings, which is interesting against the win rate. These situations are reversed. Higher win rate, lower ownership. Lower win rate, higher ownership. A little bit of an oddball there. Anthony Edwards, single digits on both sites, but always playable, 9,100, priced correctly. You can throw him into a few additional lineups. He's a 30+% usage guy. Anybody like that from the start here, you can absolutely do that with. Minnesota picks up a few possessions in that game. And just, again, a critical player, their star in a critical game. Just, or a big, interesting game. I don't know. I shouldn't say critical. Trey Jones has been pretty decent of late, 0.93 for the season, higher than that over the last 30 days. 6,100 on FanDuel, 13.6% winner, 12.6% of your top 150 on DraftKings. Doesn't really come through. 5,900, just 2.6% winner, didn't hit the top 150. No Chris Middleton, by the way, for Milwaukee as well, so that just helps everybody. So Malik Beasley pulling through, 13% win rate, 11% of the top 150 for 5,000 on FanDuel. It's pretty low price on FanDuel. At 48 on DraftKings, shooting guard only, so no positional flex. Nothing. 0.71% win rate, like one of the top 150. Clay's out. Okay. Well, that changes things. So scratch everything that I said about Clay. You're drinking on the sideline for his birthday, yeah. Yeah, I'm going to lean a bit more in Power's direction and say it's probably Podziemski that picks up, a lot more of that relevance. But Trey's very excited about Quinones. Love to see that. Let's look really quickly. Hit that like button, hit the subscribe, all those good things. You guys rock for hanging out. So that's going to open up a big chunk of time. States, here they are. 32 minutes dropping into the bucket now. So, yeah, Quinones will get some of that. Mo Moody's there. He'll probably pick up some. Podziemski is going to go from 28 into the 30s. I do have like Wiggins 28, Draymond 28. So there's an easy path to just give them a couple of those minutes as well. But yeah, I think Podziemski takes a fairly significant step forward here. He was already... It didn't really hit the board on either site in 28 minutes at 26 fantasy points for 6,600. At 6,000 on DraftKings, didn't hit the board. Or barely hit the board. But, yeah, scratching Clay. I mean, honestly, you can just almost straight up replicate it because Clay's 500 less. Maybe not straight up replicate it. On DraftKings, it's a little bit closer. The point guard eligibility probably screws it up a little bit. I'd say probably Podziemski drops into like the mid to high single digits in terms of the win rate, probably around that level of ownership. It's probably not far off of this. On FanDuel, it's probably 5 to 8 points lower than this in terms of your win rate and your top 150 exposure, just given the price difference. He does have small forward eligibility. Quinones at 4,200. Didn't come through in the top 150 at 12 points on FanDuel. 3,600 point guard and small forward. Another one of those. 14 points on DraftKings earlier. Didn't really come through. Room to grow. I'll give it that. Mo Moody, same story. 4,000 and 3,400. Probably, what are they? Yeah, Quinones is going to get those minutes, man. That's just looking at what they've run recently. Like, no Wiggins the other day. He went 24. He went 24 again with like everybody there. But in a game where Podziemski went 25, Curry went 25, Kuminga went 29, Clay went 28, Draymond went 18. Wiggins went 23. With Moody out 3 games ago, he went 23, 19, 4 games ago, also with Moody out, and 11 before that. So, yeah, I think I might have been under earlier on Moody. Not necessarily because everybody's there. Or on Quinones, rather. But I'm definitely going to give those minutes to Quinones looking at how they've run it recently. So, we're going to see an uptick there. He's going to pick up probably 8 minutes, 6 to 8 minutes in the next update. That'll make a difference. Let's call it 6 for now. That gives him 16.5 FanDuel points, 18 DraftKings points, basically. It's an uptick of 4 points here for 3,600. This is probably going to get him on the board at least. I don't know that it makes him the smash play of the day by any means, but another 4 points there would get him on the board. Trey says, I know he doesn't have crazy upside, but for 3,200, he's been getting 20 plus minutes and returning value. Just like him. Yeah, no, I'm with you there. Just looking at the way they've used him over that last handful of games with ins and outs, I think it makes sense. They pulled him last night when putting in scrubs, so I think he might be a part of the rotation like he's been. He pulled the final 3-4 minutes. Yeah, I can see 18 to 24, 25. Yeah, I do think that right on like 22 minutes. Gives him 18. If I give him 24 minutes, we're obviously talking about 19 and a quarter, somewhere around there. If I give him those additional 2 minutes. So I'm probably going to keep him around the 18-point projection, around the 22 minutes. I think that's fair. Because we do have a few mouths to feed here. But I think it's a reasonable enough spot. So you'll probably see that hit the board. Keep an eye on the projections updates. Like I said at the start of the show, coming in, kind of knew that this was going to be a day where everything that used to be is no longer. Let's see what else got updated in the last little bit. We got that Jalen news yet? Lineup alert. Podziemski will start in place of Klay Thompson. There you go. Cade Cunningham is available for that late game. Fuck. OG Anunoby underwent elbow surgery, out at least 3 weeks. Well, hopefully at least he'll be back by the playoffs. No new news. Let's run down the forwards. Of course, Chris Dunn has that small forward eligibility on DraftKings, so he's still sitting here on the board. Let me reload the page here and see if that was... I want to see if that was like a screw up in their last update over there, or like what the hell changed for them around Utah. Still going to have to figure that out after the show. That's so weird. Still there. It's got to be just getting boxed out, I guess, in their estimation by other emergent values. But pop in a Discord after the show, I guess, if you're looking for a new rundown on once I update things, where these guys land. But for me, right now, anyway, at least the way I'm looking at it, maybe we take Dunn down by a couple of points and he loses a little bit of this. We were below the field before, but now this was well ahead of the field. Even if it comes down by half, it will be well ahead of the field's current projected ownership on FanDuel. And the story is true the same way on DraftKings. Even if we take a couple points away from him, I think he's at least slate relevant play. Maybe not quite as strong. But I question what I'm looking at where I get the ownership. DiVincenzo, we've talked about extensively. He looks fantastic on both sites. DeMar DeRozan, I like the spot. 8,400, small forward only on FanDuel. 25.4% win rate, 24% of your top 150. Giving us a 1.05 per minute over the course of the season, 24.1% usage. On DraftKings, he's at 28% win rate, 26% of your top 150. And he's been better than that season-long number over the past 30 days. Got him at 113 tonight. So a little bit higher. Call it a 1/10 of a point higher per minute. Memphis a little bit short-handed. Shouldn't be much of an issue there. This game was, again, Chicago favored by 6 in Memphis. This was our low total, though. 216.5 in this game. But DeRozan will get a chunk of that. Vooch will get a chunk of that. It'll be interesting to see what happens with Vooch and Andre Drummond. They run those guys side by side. Drummond didn't get traded today. Wemby, once again, looking pretty good on DraftKings. 8,900. Went out the other night, played 27.8 minutes, put up 41.1 FanDuel points. He's been at 1.64 for the season. It's somewhere in the 1.7s in the current configuration of this team over the last 30 days. I think the spot looks pretty good. I don't necessarily love the matchup against some of Orlando's size, but I think he can handle it. I've got him on the nose at 1.7 for the night. He's been really solid. 30.9% usage. Playing in the 28 to 30 minute range. You could call it 28 and cut him down to like a 48 point projection. Take 2-3 points away from him. I don't think that's necessarily incorrect, but I really like the spot. I think at 8,900 just for what he's done. Regardless of take the last stretch of games out of the equation. Take any changes out of the equation. Just look at what he's done. 1.6 per minute for 89 at power forward and center. That's strong considering at the same position, Giannis is at 11.6. 1.65 for 0.05 of a point per minute extra and an additional 37 minutes and obviously the absurd ceiling of Giannis. You're paying the difference between 8,900 and 11.6. I think there's opportunity there for Wemby still. He is low priced on DraftKings. I get that he doesn't score the same way as he does on FanDuel on the DraftKings slate because of the things that he does. So like saying 89 versus the 10.3 that he is on FanDuel, I think there should be a distinction between the sites. But I'm looking at this, right? I'm looking at that to that and this to this. Those look awfully close in my mind. I am not saying that Wemby is currently Giannis, but I'm saying that this number is not that much lower than this number, and this number is a lot higher than this number at the same position. 27.8% winner, 29% of your top 150. Take the 3 points away from him. He'd still come up higher than Giannis. Banchero in that same game, 33% winner on FanDuel, 31% of the top 150. He came up stronger than Wemby did on FanDuel. 8,600 for him is a pretty good price. He's a 1.17 player, 48.3 FanDuel points in 34 minutes the other night. On DraftKings, 23.8%, 24% of your top 150 looks very good for 8,200 over there. Solid option. Mikal Bridges I talked about, but again, do like him on both sites. Just an aggressive amount of minutes available for him. And one of the few very good players on that team right now. In that same spot, 34 minutes going to Jalen Wilson, 3,800 power forward only on FanDuel. Popped up 21.3% in winners because he is dirt cheap and got some expectation of run. 28.6% of the top 150 over there. 18.69% win rate on DraftKings. 19% of your top 150 because he's only 3,100 over there. Small forward only. $3,200 Torrey Craig hit the board 18.8% of the time in winners, 20% of the top 150 at the power forward spot. So you got a couple really cheap value plays. Even if you don't include the Chris Dunn option, just come here. It might even pay dividends to consider that anyway, especially if I'm taking a couple points away from this. Drop down. Put them both in. Starsy Scrubsy for sure. Josh Hart. Still, I don't get totally comfy with the Josh Hart projection, like where he should be projected given how much he plays and what he does on successful nights versus the actual fantasy points per minute output over the course of time over the last 30 days. It's a lot of peaks and valleys. It's, as I've talked about many times, it's a good rebounder, good assist man, not a great shooter, doesn't take a ton of shots, needs to knock them down for us to gain that additional little oomph to push him into even this like 31 point territory, but just another guy on the Knicks, very likely to play about 40 minutes tonight. Got him at 38 and he looks great. There's only upside from here for Josh Hart, really, unless he goes out there, happens to not get his hands on enough rebounds tonight and miss all of his shots. Don't think that's going to happen. 22.0% win rate on FanDuel. That said, he did come up only at 8.6% in the top 150. Same thing on DraftKings, 15.8% win rate, 8% of the top 150. It's just popular, and the ceiling kind of plateaus a little bit with Josh Hart. Franz Wagner, 14.6% winner, only 4% of the top 150. 13 on the nose across both categories on DraftKings, 7,800 on FanDuel versus 71 on DK. Franz is moderately popular, about that level of popularity on DraftKings, and about that level of popularity on FanDuel. Jalen Brunson is out. Huzzah! I knew that was going to happen. All right. I'm just going to completely forego the sitting here looking at the Sims lineups because they're completely different now, right? So we don't need to do that. Let's just talk this through for the next 9 minutes, and then I'm going to punch out so that I can get the stuff updated. So, all right. So Jalen's gone. That's going to give 40, 40, 40. This is just stupid. All right, and then let's see who's actually on the roster. I have to assume that Toppin, Charlie Brown, Furkan Korkmaz is going to get waived by the Pacers. Malcolm Brogdon now questionable for anybody playing that late slate. James Bouknight to be waived by the Hornets. We were talking about him in Discord a couple weeks ago about his off-court issues and why he didn't get playing time. All right. Maybe the Knicks can make a quick call to the Pistons, have them waived Arcidiacono, and then they can re-sign him before. Because I'm sure they're not going to... The Pistons don't plan on keeping him. I'm sure he'll make his way back to the Knicks in the next couple of weeks. Maybe they can work that out before tonight's game. Presumably, Charlie Brown, Jacob Toppin, and Dwayne Washington are all going to be here tonight. So let's just give them a couple of minutes to put them on the board. Toppin. And Dwayne Washington's not even on this list. Is he on the slate? I hope. Yes, he is. All right. All right, that puts us back to 240. So if I made a Tibbsian rotation, and it's not even really because there's 10 guys in this, so Tibbs could cut this even shorter. Technically, Tibbs could run a 7-man, which he did do the other day. And he could just run DiVincenzo. Nope. Did I hit undo? What did I do? Oh, yeah, it is. I am right. I just accidentally... My eyes must have skipped the line. I took the minutes away from Josh Hart instead of Jalen Brunson by accident. So everything I just said applies. Tibbs could run a 7-man of DiVincenzo, Precious, Josh Hart, Hartenstein, McBride, Sims, and Taj. I don't think he's going to do that because that would require him to murder Taj Gibson. I don't think Taj is going to go out there and play 28 minutes tonight. I figure we're going to see Jacob Toppin at the very least. Out of the available two-way guys, Toppin is 6'9", 205. Charlie Brown is 6'6", 199. Dwayne Washington, 6'3", 210. The Knicks are short on size overall. I know we're talking about taking Jalen Brunson, their point guard and primary ball handler, out of the equation. So it's weird that I'm mentioning the bigs. But I do think there's a crucial crunch around those guys where I think it's just going to be 38, 40 minutes of Deuce McBride and then like 8 minutes of, I mean, it could just go to DiVincenzo handling the ball or Josh Hart handling the ball or somebody like that. And they don't even worry about it. But it'll probably pick up 4 minutes apiece for Brown and Washington, 8 minutes for one of them. I don't think necessarily. I'm not going to project it that way. So the way I've got it now that I just threw together, 40 for all of Devo, Precious, and Josh Hart, 38 for McBride, 38 for Hartenstein, 20 for Jericho Sims, 12 for Taj, and then 4 minutes apiece for the scrubs. I have to think through how that actually functions on the basketball court of it, but it's probably going to be something stupid like that. It's just who Tibbs is. So DiVincenzo just gets aggressively better. Hartenstein is ridiculously good at 79, 67. Other places are already projecting him under where he should be projected. Now he's just going to look even better. Precious is going to look very good. Josh Hart's going to look very good. Deuce is going to look great. Deuce McBride at 4,700, 4,100 pops to around 30 fantasy points on both sites without doing any adjustments to his rates. So just in an is who he's been situation for Deuce, he lands at 30 fantasy points if I give him 38 minutes. And you're probably out there saying, well, it's crazy to be like, oh, wow, those guys are going to play 40 minutes tonight because their point guard's missing. But this team's ludicrously short already. Quentin Grimes traded. Malachi Flynn traded. Mitch Robinson out. Julius Randle out. Evan Fournier traded. OG Anunoby out. There's just not a lot of bodies. Not a lot to go. Ryan Arcidiacono traded, unless they can bring him back. And then just looking at what they've done the last few days, even before this, last game, Precious and DiVincenzo both played 40 minutes. The game before that, they both played 40 minutes. Precious played 42. The game before that, Precious played 43. Game before that, he played 40. So giving Precious 40 minutes, I have no qualms with right now. DiVincenzo, same story. 40, 40, 38, 39, 42, his last 5. No issues giving him 40 here. Josh Hart, 37, 42, 38, 43, 39, 40. Hartenstein, 35, 33, 35. It's aggressive to give him another 2, but I think it's, 2, 3. I think it's viable. Jericho Sims missed the last one. Played in the mid-teens the last few games, but did play 24 5 games ago. High energy kid. Obviously, and again, Taj Gibson I don't think is going to be capable of playing extended minutes. So that's just a tight group right there. And then Charlie Brown played 2 minutes 5 games ago. And none of these other guys have played at all recently. I don't know if they've played at all this season. Let's see. Dwayne Washington has not played this season. Charlie Brown got into 4 games so far this year. 1.5 minutes per game. Jacob Toppin has been in 3 games this year. I tend to think we're talking about Brown Toppin rather than Washington. Just Tibbs being Tibbs. And I have no idea which of these guys, I assume they're all with the team. Whichever one is not with the team, if that turns out to be the case, then, here we go. They just dropped it. All right, so it's just Toppin and Brown. So scratch Dwayne Washington entirely. He's not available tonight. So there you go. Knicks players available. Miles McBride, Dante DiVincenzo, Josh Hart, Precious, Hartenstein, Taj, Jacob Toppin, Charlie Brown. Quote from Tibbs, we have more than enough. Okay. Sorry to derail the entire end of the show with just trying to figure out this next group. But, all right. So, no Dwayne Washington. How do I have 9? Oh, fuck. Jericho Sims isn't on that list. Jericho Sims is out too, huh? Cool. That's why I was like, wait a minute. That's even shorter than I thought. Yeah, Jericho Sims also out. Cam Johnson out at least 2 more games for the Nets. I forgot that Sims was questionable as I was running that down. Maybe Taj Gibson can play 28 minutes. He might have to. I think, all right, so that's going to extend Jacob Toppin, excuse me. Trying to figure out the math. There. 16. Tibbs is going to have to play some of these guys. Taj is going to probably have to get out there. If I give Taj 18, then I can put Toppin at 16, Charlie Brown at 10, and Charlie Brown probably doesn't get that 10. It's probably more like Taj 18, Toppin 18, Charlie Brown 8. Keep an eye on where I projected. The overall point is going to be Deuce McBride, Hartenstein, Josh Hart, Precious, and DiVincenzo are all going to look spectacular, regardless of where you're playing. They're all going to be popular. I don't know that I would four-man that on a slate like this, but like any combination of Deuce, DiVincenzo, Hartenstein, Deuce, DiVincenzo, Precious, Deuce, Hart, Hartenstein, whatever you want from that group. 3 guys, probably playable. But there is a lot of other value on this slate, so I don't necessarily want to say that you got to get carried away with it. Like for example, the $4,000 Utah guys are still there. Maybe. The $3,000 Torrey Craig, Jalen Wilson types are still there. I don't know necessarily that the Knicks are going to provide anybody in that range. Like Jacob Toppin, if I give him 16 minutes, 3,500, 3,000. In his ridiculously small sample so far for the season, he was technically at 1.17. That ain't happening. Let's call it 0.85. I think that's fair. That puts him at 13-ish FanDuel points, 10-ish DraftKings points. Taj is dead minimum. If I give Taj 18 minutes, he's at just in the 9s. It's just a 0.5 per minute guy this year. If I put him back at last year's 0.79. Oops. In 18 minutes at last year's rate, Taj is kind of maybe going to be interesting at the dead minimum. It's just a 14-point FanDuel projection, a 13-point DraftKings projection. But there's clearly an argument to be made that it shouldn't be 18, that it should be more like 22. But calling it like a 40-18 in that spot is weird. Or a 30-18. And it's not that straightforward because all these big men are going to play both spots. Yeah, I think Taj is probably on the board. Dead minimum on both sides. Center power forward on FanDuel. Center only on DraftKings. You can obviously move them around a little. Keep an eye on any news from the Knicks. Maxi Kleber will play. Kyrie Irving will play. Luka Doncic will play. That's good news. Yeah, this is going to be a wacky one, guys. I see everybody was yelling at me for the Sims being rolled out thing. I got there eventually. Trey asks, do you like the Memphis guys as pivots? Gilliard, Conchar, kind of like Jackson. Triple J is always on the board. He's questionable, but if he plays, always on the board for me. The other guys, Triple J right now, 13% winner on FanDuel, 11.2%. Very much in play on both sites. Vince, a little bit playable. Who did you mention? Gilliard, Conchar. Conchar, not really on either site. Didn't really come through all that strong in 27 minutes. Competitively priced with other guys that are just pulling that value away. And then Gilliard, too high priced on FanDuel. Didn't come through at all. 4.9. I'm not sure I go that direction, Trey. If you get, who's questionable? It was Derrick Rose. If you get Derrick Rose out, then Gilliard potentially picks up some more. If Jaren Jackson doesn't, there's just a bundle of minutes that drop into the pool here. They traded away, what's his face? That doesn't really matter. Yeah, nobody really got crazy. Vince was all right on both sites, and then Triple J is who he is and looks playable as hell. Santi not really crushing it. A little bit playable on FanDuel, not really so on DK. But the Conchars of the world right now, not hitting it that hard. Is Luka worth playing? Yeah, quite honestly, I don't really. Let's see what Vegas did with that. Hopefully it's up. It is not back on the board yet. I mean, they were already favored by, what did I say, 3 at the top of the show. They're probably going to be favored by a significant margin more. That said, those scrappy Knickerbockers, I don't know. They find a way to stay in games. As Tibbs said, we've got more than enough. Probably the fan in me coming out. That's probably going to jump to Dallas favored by 7 and change. Luka wasn't really coming up all that crazy strong anyway. He didn't come up really at all on FanDuel. He did come up a little bit on DraftKings, 9% win rate, but just landed in 4% of the top 150. And at that point, yeah, I might get a little bit concerned about it. He was also just probable. Kyrie just probable as well. There is the oddball chance that Dallas just says, like, well, if the Knicks aren't playing anybody, why should we play anybody? You never know. But I feel like an MSG game, they're going to want to get out there. They don't come to MSG that often. Yeah, I don't know that I'd give him that big a downgrade, especially since he didn't really come through all that strongly to begin with. So it just wasn't a great play, but maybe that does tickle the back of the mind if you're making like one specific decision about him and you've got a reasonable alternative at the extreme pay up level. Lively ruled out. All right. I think we had him out already. What else? All right. I think that's a pretty good spot to bail here, guys. Yeah, Sims is out, Dale. Nick's running with... Actually, I probably should get over to the garden in case they need me to suit up tonight. It's not that far. I can make it by game time. Yeah, Nick's running without him and without him tonight. So, big plays for all 3 of those guys. That guy and that guy. This guy gets interesting at the dead minimum on both sites. And then a couple scrap minutes for the Jacob Toppins of the world. But I wouldn't be totally shocked to see him just be like, all right, Toppin, give us 12, 18 minutes, something in that territory, just so that Taj Gibson doesn't die. That's basically it. With that, guys, I thank you very much for hanging with me through this chaotic show. This was a fun one. I don't know how productive it was, but it was fun. You guys absolutely rock. Hit that like button. Some interesting news. We got somebody who potential good brain coming in who wants to provide some esports content. So we're gonna have hopefully a esports channel will pop into the Discord. I don't know if it'll be projections necessarily, but it sounds like he wants to make some picks. maybe write some couple articles or something like that, or just provide content through Discord. But I guess we'll be getting into the esports game a little bit. And then it sounds like he's a pretty good brain for MLB as well. So maybe we'll get him involved in some MLB content as well. And yeah, it'll be interesting. But yeah, maybe have another voice in here with me a little bit from time to time, and through the site, and somebody to handle a totally different area of DFS that I don't do at all. So I totally welcome that. I think that's great. So hopefully a little value add there for you guys. So with that in mind, good luck out there tonight, gang. Somebody go win something. I'll see you tomorrow.